August 2019. News breaks across the globe. Jeffrey Epstein, a wealthy financier with ties to some of the most powerful figures in the world, has been found dead in his Manhattan jail cell. Officially ruled a suicide, the announcement only fueled the fire of an already explosive scandal. The story of Epstein's private island, his alleged crimes, and the network of influence that seemed to protect him for years. But before that shocking ending, there was a trail of victims, unanswered questions, and a case that still unsettles people to this day. The heart of this case is not Epstein himself, but the countless young women who say they were lured into his orbit. Many of them were underage. Their stories are painfully similar, recruited under the promise of modeling opportunities, jobs, or financial support, only to find themselves trapped in an abusive system that centered on Epstein's lavish properties. For years, these women's voices were ignored or silenced. Some went to the police, some filed lawsuits, but Epstein's wealth and influence kept the accusations buried. The victims were made to feel powerless against a man who seemed untouchable. Jeffrey Epstein wasn't born into wealth. He started out as a teacher, then moved into finance, eventually managing money for some of the richest people in the world. By the 1990s, he was living in mansions, flying private jets, and building connections with celebrities, royals, and politicians. But behind the glamour was something darker. In the early 2000s, whispers began circulating about his behavior, whispers that soon became formal accusations. At the center of it all was a place called Little St. James, Epstein's private island in the U.S. Virgin Islands. To the outside world, it looked like paradise, turquoise waters, a sprawling villa, and luxury everywhere you turned. But for the victims, the island became known by another name, Pedophile Island. Allegations claim that young women were brought there and exploited. The island was guarded by private staff, boats, and sometimes even armed security, making escape nearly impossible. Survivors described it as a trap, an isolated playground where Epstein and his circle of friends could operate in secrecy. One of the island's most mysterious features was a blue and white striped building, sometimes called the Temple. No one knows for certain what it was used for, but it became a symbol of the disturbing rumors that surrounded Epstein's empire. In 2005, a family in Florida reported Epstein to the police after their 14-year-old daughter said she had been abused. The investigation uncovered dozens of other victims. By 2008, Epstein should have faced serious federal charges, but instead he struck what many now call a sweetheart deal. Prosecutors agreed to let him plead guilty to minor state charges of soliciting prostitution, even though many of the victims were underage. He served only 13 months in a county jail, and even then he was allowed to leave during the day on work release. It was a shocking example of how power and money could bend justice. For years after his release, Epstein continued to live extravagantly. He kept his properties, his jets, and his political and celebrity connections. It seemed as though nothing could touch him. But in 2018, investigative journalists revisited his case, interviewing victims and exposing how much had been hidden. Public outrage grew. By 2019, federal authorities finally acted. Epstein was arrested at a New Jersey airport and charged with sex trafficking of minors. When agents raided his mansion, they found hundreds of photos of young girls, hidden safes with cash and diamonds, and evidence that the abuse was even more widespread than anyone had realized. For the victims, it seemed like justice was finally within reach. Epstein was denied bail and held in a Manhattan federal jail. His trial was expected to reveal not just his crimes, but also the names of those who enabled him. But before that could happen, Epstein was found dead in his cell. The official cause was suicide, yet the circumstances were so unusual that millions of people worldwide began to doubt it. The security cameras in the jail allegedly malfunctioned. The guards on duty fell asleep and failed to check on him. Documents went missing. For many, it was too much of a coincidence. Epstein's death left more questions than answers. Who else was involved? How did he build a network that operated in plain sight for decades? Why were his victims ignored for so long? Attention then turned to Ghislaine Maxwell, Epstein's longtime companion. In 2021, she was convicted of sex trafficking and conspiracy charges, accused of recruiting and grooming underage girls for Epstein. Her conviction brought some justice, but for many victims, it still wasn't enough. Today, Epstein's Island has been sold, but it remains a haunting reminder of the case. His death means the full truth may never come out. The victims are left with scars, the public is left with suspicion, and the world is left asking, how many secrets died with Jeffrey Epstein? The story of Epstein's Island isn't just about one man. It's about a system that failed the vulnerable, protected the powerful, and left us with a case that may never truly be solved. And that is why, years later, the name Jeffrey Epstein still sparks anger, curiosity, and mistrust. Because it's not just a crime story, it's a story about power, silence, and how justice can be delayed or denied.